This video is brought to you by my brand new two-part art portraiture series. Steph's making a list and checking it twice, so head on over to the link in the description to find out if she's naughty or nice. A few months back, Nikon surprised us with the release of the 35mm f1.4 lens. It caught us a bit off guard because a lot of us were expecting a 1.2 premium S lens. Now, this wasn't just a one-off judo move from Nikon. It turns out it was the start of a new range of non-S, non-premium 1.4 prime lenses, which they've just followed up with the 50mm. Now, this is a little bit surprising due to the timing. Now, Nikon's mirrorless range first came out with the 51.8 S lens, then the 51.2 S lens, then the f2.8 1:1 macro lens, and now they've followed it up with the 1.4. And I'll talk a little bit later about why that's a little bit unusual. But as it is, I have all four of these in, so let's do a good old-fashioned shootout. Now, the 50mm is arguably the most versatile of the prime lenses, so let's start out with a wander around my favorite temple on Hong Kong Island. In this low light environment, I'd say the 1.2, the 1.4 and the 1.8 were all performing flawlessly. Didn't miss any shots. The macro was noticeably slower, however, and that's understandable given how much lower light transmission there is. But for its purpose, getting in close, it does the job. It gives a true one-to-one macro reproduction, which opens up different shot opportunities in a location like this. As we'll discuss later though, it's still not my pick of Nikon macro lenses. Next up, I got a sample of different shots here with Honey out at the beach in much better light, so we're at a nice low ISO. Now, please note these images have already been run through Reproduction, my choice for professional portrait retouching. I normally wouldn't retouch images in a lens comparison video, but Reproduction removes skin discoloration and pimples, that kind of thing, without removing the natural skin texture and detail. If you shoot people, check it out. You can get a free trial at the link in the description below, and you can also download the unedited RAW files there as well. Now, in this first setup, I have to say, I think the image quality of the 1.8S outperforms the 1.4, and that probably isn't surprising, seeing it costs about 20% more. The f2.8 actually does well here for reasons I'll discuss in a moment, and the 1.2 delivers it exactly what you want it to. The 1.2 is an absolute star, there's no question about it. There's a lot of really fast portrait lenses on the market from different brands. I'm not pointing fingers, but from the cheapest of the cheap to literally the most expensive on the market, that do a great job of just obliterating the background with blur, but they're just not sharp or contrasty anywhere when you're wide open, even where the focus point is meant to be. That's not the case with this guy. It's got great detail, and if you want to see more, see the sample files below, but it's just an excellent performer. In that setup, I think the macro lens reminds us that you don't need to be shooting wide open for every shot though. There, with a reasonably tight head and shoulders type shot, we were still getting decent separation from the background, and we're getting great detail through her face because at f2.8 we're actually getting the whole face in focus rather than just getting, you know, the eyelashes to the temple in focus. So it gives us more visual detail there by having more of it in sharp focus. It might be hard to get an idea of just how big the difference of reproduction ratio between these lenses is. So here's some watches I recently got the opportunity to photograph, and this is as close as we can get on the 1.2. This is what we can get on the 1.8. A bit closer again with the 1.4. But this is what you get with the one-to-one reproduction of the f2.8 macro. So you can see this makes it a much more versatile lens if you're looking to shoot close-ups. Looking at these shots from the beach, one of the main things that pops out to me is the vignette. The 1.4 to me looks the worst, followed by the 1.8, then the 1.2, then the macro. It's usual that the fastest lenses will have more vignetting, but it's surprising here that the 1.2 outperforms the 1.4 and the 1.8 all at their relative fastest apertures. Next up, these vines were in such an unglamorous spot at the edge of the sand, right next to a walkway, but the setting sun gave us beautiful color on her skin and on the greenery. There was this old basket that the vines had all grown into, so I kind of ripped it out and moved it to have it be in the composition to help balance out the frame. Next up, I met up with Felicia recently shooting for my Patreon page, and we grabbed some extra test shots on each of these 4 lenses.
You can have whatever you like. You can have whatever you like. When the beat goes off, we bang to the. You can have whatever you like.
So guys, even here, this is a 2.8 lens, but at this distance, it's already stops down to f3. People often get confused about that with macro lenses, that it says it's an f2.8. Actually, once you get to the closest focus, I think this one is probably 5.6. Typically, you lose 2 stops yet. So if I'm at closest focus, and at closest focus, how close? I got to get really close, sorry. Okay, so I'm there getting her eyelashes. Freaky. So there I'm getting her, but my maximum there is f5.6. If I, from this distance, so a tight headshot, it's f3.3. Here is f3, and all the way to the knee is still maximum aperture of f3. So just be aware of that. You don't get the full f2.8, but you get that capability to come in much closer and get some little detail shots.
Whatever you like.
So as I alluded to earlier, I can appreciate it's a little odd to get the 1.4, which was kind of the typical fast 50, last in the range. And I think it's just a matter of timing, not of strategy. When Nikon first got into the mirrorless market, I think they were a little bit half-hearted and timid about it, and they didn't go in guns blazing. So they went in with the 1.8, which however was spectacular. And I don't think that they had all 4 of these on their roadmap, certainly not as they exist today, at that early point. I just don't think they strategized it. I think as time went on, you know, we had basically all of these 3 lenses 3 years ago, and then the 1.4 came out after that. So I think they identified that there was a gap in the range, but the 1.2 is so good, maybe it wouldn't make sense to position the 1.4 too close to that, making it an S lens, making it a whole lot bigger. So actually making it the budget option in the system, whilst it's unusual to have a 1.4 be the budget option versus the 1.8. In this case, I think it makes sense, and the 1.8 is absolutely spectacular, so it deserves to be, you know, their go-to 50 if you don't have deep pockets and strong shoulders. And I would personally recommend most people go for the 1.8 unless you really want that extra stop of half a stop of light, or you want to save that extra $100 or whatever. I think the 1.8 is very little difference in terms of bokeh. Better detail, better flare control, better overall image quality. You're just sacrificing that half a stop of light. Then the 1.2 is clearly the king, with some obvious trade-offs of size, weight, and price. The 51 2.8 macro, keep in mind it's not 2.8 a lot of the time, it's 5.6 when you're at macro, and for a lot of portrait work it's actually going to be more like 3.2, that kind of range. It's great that it's so small and light and gets you a true 1:1 reproduction ratio, but it absolutely wouldn't be my choice of Nikon macro lens, whether you're going on or off brand. I would go for the 105 over this. I don't think it's worth more than these two lenses, despite that that's how it's priced. And I think for most people, unless you really know that 50 and macro, 50 is the length that works for you for macro, I would say getting a set of extension tubes and then you can pop them onto your 50 or your 85 or your 105 and get some options. Because for me, when I do want to shoot macro, generally 50 isn't the right focal length. Something like 105 or at least a 90 is a better option to get the working distance from my subject that actually is beneficial for me. So I hope that all helps, folks. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. If you're not already subscribed, please do. You can check out the sample files to pixel peep for yourself below. You can also check out details of my Patreon page, and you can download a free trial of the Reblum retouching software over there as well. Thanks, guys. I'll see you soon.